Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
Our show today is brought to you by EvolveFish.com, featuring holiday heathen greeting cards. You can get those as singles or boxed sets for the holidays. Great gifts, sparing a variety of different atheist, secular, and humanist messages. They've got jewelry and t-shirts, mugs, glasses, and a whole lot more. Evolve Fish has extended the 25% off special on all partner merchandise, and you can find that under the partner tab at EvolveFish.com. That includes the Thinking Atheist merchandise, as we are a partner. That means the $11 Start Thinking coffee mug in both black and white. Normally it's $11. You can get it for $8.25. The $12 sport mug, $9. The t-shirt that says I have a personal relationship with reality, normally $22, right now is $16.50, and so on. They're offering a special gift item of 2 engraved Thinking Atheist wine glasses. That's 2 for $19. And of course, they have gift certificates if the giftee wants to go and select what they want on their own. Move quickly if you're going to make Christmas. Thanks again to this terrific organization for their support. And of course, thanks to you for yours. Log on and check them out. EvolveFish.com. Merry Christmas to you and to yours. I can already see people wincing out there. Oh, God, he said the word Christmas. Now, the protest I hear from many different types of people usually fall along 3 or 4 different categories. Of course, the first category is the person who's a Christian who celebrates the literal Jesus, literal baby Jesus. They go to the Christmas pageant or the cantata, whatever they call it, every single December. And the idea that I would celebrate Christmas, it makes no sense. It's Christmas. It's Jesus, the birth of Jesus, the baby Jesus in a manger. And there's Mary and there's Joseph and all the animals and the star and the shepherds. And I don't know what are you doing? They cannot fathom how an atheist could enjoy the holiday. Then there are the atheists who say, why in the world would you ever celebrate a day that is about a deity that you do not believe in? And for those of you aware of the pagan origins of most of our Christmas traditions, you are well ahead of the game. Just hang with me. And the third category of people are usually those who were just burned out and completely cynical about the commercialization of the holiday. I mean, have you seen the videos, the Black Friday videos of people just tearing each other's eyeballs out over some piece of crap on an end cap at a retail outlet somewhere? People who are supposed to be in the spirit of giving and love and joy and happiness and bliss and kumbaya. They run into these places of purchase and they see a TV or a PlayStation or a doll or some article of clothes, who knows what it is, and they chew each other to ribbons over it. People are punching each other out, and it's just insane. It makes you fear for the species. Is this what we've become? Is this what we're reduced to? I think I told a story a few years ago about the time I used to work in retail. I worked at Walmart when I was 19, 20 years old. And we saw people jumped over the layaway counter. Someone lost their layaway and they just flipped out. I've seen people get into fistfights in checkout lines. I'm not sure what started the fight, but these two ladies were just wailing on each other. And the whole time I think, is this really what we're about? And I understand the cynicism. I understand how it can happen. And then we have to endure the annual War on Christmas protests. It's like they tee this ball up in October and they just wait for the whistle. Wait for the annual opportunities to rend their garments and act indignant about the assault on our religious liberties in this country. Jesus is under attack. Our faith is under attack. We're under attack. It's terrible. Fox News usually originates quite a bit of this content, and it almost seems like a reflex at this measure, doesn't it? It's become a caricature of a war on Christmas. especially after people like Jon Stewart and so many others have just skewered those who are protesting. Didn't he go after Sarah Palin at some point? And Bill O'Reilly's always an easy target. O'Reilly has essentially anointed himself kind of a righteous warrior, a crusader in this battle against the secular humanist out there and those evil atheists who are trying to rob Christmas of its meaning, you know. And so, again, I thought it'd be good to get into the question of Christmas, the war on Christmas. And for those who haven't already heard my explanation of why I, as an atheist activist, enjoy and celebrate Christmas, I will provide that answer again in the final minutes of this broadcast. My guest on the broadcast in just a few minutes is going to be Andrew Seidel of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Now, the FFRF is quite often in the news as it does battle with specific secular, government, taxpayer-funded entities or organizations that have religiously imposed stuff going on inside its walls or on its property. And so we're going to talk to Andrew about the FFRF and going after crosses and nativity scenes and that kind of thing. We're going to get a snapshot into the vile, wicked maneuverings of the FFRF as it attempts to squash all detectable tidings of great joy and just snuff out the very meaning of this sacred, beautiful, wonderful, joyous Christian holiday. And for those who do not have a sarcasm detector, of course, I'm being facetious. But I do have some legitimate questions about some of these battles over nativity scenes and such, and we're going to take some of your questions as well. But first, there was a great story on Break.com with the headline that said this: Ohio town outraged by zombie Jesus nativity scene on man's lawn. And I had to share this awesome story with you. My only regret is I can't share the photograph, so go Google it. For today in Outrage, we go to Sycamore Township, Ohio, where resident Jason Dixon created a Halloween Christmas mashup that was sure to offend somebody. Nobody showed the good people of Sycamore a screening of The Nightmare Before Christmas. These men, and it shows zombie wise men, these men might have gotten so wise from eating all those brains. Dixon says he wanted to make a nativity scene, so he worked with what he had. Luckily for fans of zombies, he had plenty of the undead to make a ghoulish Christmas story that would be more fitting on an episode of The Walking Dead. While 30 or 40 cars a day stop by to take photos of the unholy manger, neighbors and the town are not so enthused. Town officials are claiming he's breaking ordinances that prevent him from building a structure on his front lawn that takes up more than 35% of the area. Now, let me just stop. Do we honestly think that they would be freaking if this was a Christmas scene, a standard straight-played nativity scene? I think not. Back to the article. Dixon says he's sure if it wasn't for the zombie Jesus, they wouldn't be bothering him. The neighbors don't like it, quote, "The neighbors don't like it, my father hates it, and anything bad that happens, he blames it on that," Dixon told the local news. The best part is that the town is requiring he remove the decorations by December 26th. What? Doesn't everybody dismantle their Christmas decorations after Christmas is past? I don't really understand that. Anyway, if you get a chance, I think you can probably just Google Zombie Jesus Sycamore Township, Ohio. And the photographs are really worth the few minutes it'll take to check it out. It's a fun little nativity scene. And the undead Jesus looks pretty good as well. Article in the Washington Post dated November 9th. It said this: Starbucks removed Christmas from their cups because they hate Jesus, Christian says in viral Facebook video. Now, again, I'm talking about Joshua Feuerstein. I got to talk about it. He's in the news again. And while some give me so much shit for giving this guy any more airtime than he's already had, I've come to the opinion in my own life that the more he speaks, the more we win. There was a big stink about Feuerstein just yesterday about a video that he'd posted originally in July. It was an excerpt that was playing in regard to this Cecil the Lion video that he had done, and he was talking about how everybody was outraged about the killing of Cecil, but nobody's outraged about the killing of the unborn. And so he had said in this clip that went viral, he said, quote, "I say tonight we punish Planned Parenthood. I think it's time that abortion doctors should have to run and hide and be afraid for their life." Well, Joshua Feuerstein suspiciously deleted the video. And then all the mirrors of the video started to disappear off of YouTube. People would download it and repost it, and they would disappear. Fortunately, on the internet, nothing ever dies. There are still incarnations of this thing out there. Well, Feuerstein apparently realizes what a total snafu this is for him. And then he might have gotten himself into really big trouble. So he posted a response video that protests that it was highly edited and taken out of context. Well, Hemant Mehta at The Friendly Atheist found the original video that he'd posted in July, and he posted a transcript. I'll just read it for you. He said this, and I quote, and you tell me in what context this is appropriate or acceptable. So let me get this right. Tonight, America is crying about an old lion named Cecil that was killed by some dipwad who cut his head off and then left his body there. But check this out. Planned Parenthood has hunted down millions and millions of little innocent babies, stuck a knife into the uterus, cut them, pulled them out, crushed their skull with forceps, ripped their body apart, sold their tissue, and threw them bleeding into a trash bin. You guys are crying about a lion, but what about the babies? You know what I call that? I call that being a hypocrite. I say tonight, we punish Planned Parenthood. I think it's time that abortion doctors should have to run and hide and be afraid for their life instead of some hunter. Both are wrong, but one is a lion, the other are humans. Stand up for humans. And as Hemant said in his blog, you can see for yourself that context doesn't make things any better. The shorter clip merely removed the parts about Cecil. It didn't twist his words in any way. Feuerstein was still calling for his followers to go after abortion doctors, making them run for their lives out of fear of physical harm. No wonder he deleted the original video. It confirmed what we already suspected. So that's the most recent insanity revolving around Joshua Feuerstein in a strong field. Which brings me to Starbucks. The short version of the story goes something like this. Out of the blue, Joshua Feuerstein decides that Starbucks' decision to simply have solid red coffee cups this year without Christmas decorations or the word Merry Christmas or whatever is an attack on Jesus. So he goes in and he tells them when they ask him his name for his coffee, his name is Merry Christmas. And lo and behold, when his coffee was ready, they had to take a Sharpie and write Merry Christmas on the cup anyway. Isn't he clever? And then they called his name, Merry Christmas, over the intercom or through the store or whatever when his coffee was done. And he goes out in front of the Starbucks with his little phone camera or whatever, and he encourages all of his legions of followers to do the same. We're going to force Starbucks to acknowledge the Christ in Christmas and to say Merry Christmas in this era of political correctness. And this ridiculous stunt made international news. Well, Feuerstein somehow ended up on CNN's newsroom broadcast, where CNN contributor Pete Dominick called Feuerstein an entrepreneurial bigot, and he joined the rest of us in laughing out loud at the really bad joke. That is Joshua Feuerstein. Speaking of really bad jokes, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump actually stepped on to the Feuerstein bandwagon on the 10th of November when he said this, quote, I have one of the most successful Starbucks in Trump Tower. Maybe we should boycott Starbucks. I don't know. Seriously, I don't care. That's the end of that lease, but who cares? Trump told a crowd in Springfield, Illinois, Monday. If I become president, we're all going to be saying Merry Christmas again. That I can tell you. That I can tell you. Is somebody saying to somebody else, you can't say Merry Christmas? Did Starbucks say to its customers, you can't say Merry Christmas? Is Starbucks preventing Joshua Feuerstein from giving his name as Merry Christmas so they would say Merry Christmas when his coffee is ready? Is Christmas really under attack in this country? And of course, the answer is no. And yet we have to listen to this drum pounding every single December. Actually, November and December. And it's pathetic. Of course, the war on Christmas is nothing new. I mean, there were times in this country when many of the Christmas practices that we enjoy today were rendered illegal or at the very least immoral because they weren't Christian enough, that kind of thing. John Gibson was a contributor on Fox News. Where else? He wrote a book called The War on Christmas, How the Liberal Plot to Ban the Sacred Christian Holiday is Worse Than You Thought. That released in October of 2006. Talk about a manufactured controversy. A few years ago, former Alaska governor and former vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin released her book, Good Tidings and Great Joy, Protecting the Heart of Christmas. Now, I must take a moment here to read an excerpt from Alex Falcone's review, which was posted on the Portland Mercury website in December of 2013. It was titled, I read Sarah Palin's new book about the war on Christmas. Here's what I learned. Quote, her newest book, Good Tidings and Great Joy, Protecting the Heart of Christmas, is like her others, a delightful read if you're able to disconnect the hate part of your brain and just focus on the imaginary world she creates. It's an amusing, Seussian world featuring combinations of real and made-up words, Obamacare death panels, lamestream media, and don't forget, liberal, militant, atheist secularists, the word salad Grinches of her holiday diatribe. Instead of stealing Christmas with a Santa suit, they use what she calls an extreme legal technicality, what other people might call constitutional protection against establishment of state religion. Her inability to use words correctly illustrates perfectly her disconnection from the world. My favorite example is her heartwarming story about Christmas 2012, which fell right after the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary. To celebrate the event, I guess, she bought Todd Palin a gun for Christmas, which she referred to as an act of civil disobedience. Not only is that a hilarious repurposing of a term with a noble history, it's also a perfect misuse of both words. Buying guns is both legal and dangerous, making it an act of uncivil obedience. But words are as far as she can think. At one point, she gets so frustrated trying to put together complete thoughts or reaching her publisher-required word count, she just starts spewing random words. Quote, I've told you the power of words, so here are some good old-fashioned words. Work, honesty, courage, justice, perseverance. If only someone had told her the power of sentences. If sentences are hard for her, logic is completely out of the question. Good Tidings reads like an exam question in Logical Fallacies 101. 1/3 of the book is her vision of Christmas yet to come, in which she details all the horrible things that have happened because we lost respect for Jesus-y Christmas. Quote, you guys, in this future that I just made up, everything is terrible, so we should change. Argument ad imaginarium? Good work, Alex, 10 points. Here's how she deals with the fact that Christmas isn't historically Christian. Quote, does that mean Christians won the war on Saturnalia? You bet. And that shows the power of new traditions to shape culture. This in a book about how the way Christmas is being shaped by modern culture is inherently evil. Argument self-contradictorium? Correct. 15 points. And most importantly, she really wants to prove that belief in God makes one good and atheism makes one evil. Quote, it was good Christians who opposed slavery and helped end segregation. And who was opposing them? Did I miss the part where a national coalition of atheists were pushing for slavery? This one's actually got a real name, affirming a disjunct, 25 points. Stores need to say Merry Christmas because that's the true meaning of the season, but buying things isn't the meaning of Christmas, so it doesn't matter what stores say, but it's really important to them that you acknowledge their religion because words matter, but militant atheists shouldn't get so easily offended by some simple words like Merry Christmas. I'm just going to call that one argument ad Palinium for 50 points and an A+. Again, she's not evil. She's just suffering from a major case of the stupids. The fun thing about reading Palin's books is that she spent her life in a town of 9,000 and doesn't read the news. When she feels attacked by the war on Christmas, it's actually the horrible realization that other people exist laying siege to her mental walls. Again, this was listed in the Blogtown section of the Portland Mercury. Alex Falcone. I read Sarah Palin's new book about the war on Christmas, and here's what I learned. Really good stuff. Let's talk to a guy who's actually been participating in some of these battles out there. Battles about religious symbols on government property, that kind of thing. And these seem to always come to a head around Christmas time. His name is Andrew Seidel. He's got a Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience and Environmental Science. He graduated magna cum laude from Tulane University Law School. He studied human rights and international law at the University of Amsterdam, and he traveled the world on semester at sea. In May of 2011, he completed his Master of Laws at Denver University Sturm College of Law. He's written a book on international human rights law, and he works as a constitutional consultant for the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the FFRF. Andrew Seidel, thanks so much for joining me on the radio. Great to have you.
It's my pleasure, Seth.
What do I call you? Are you a consultant, a legal consultant?
My official title is Constitutional Consultant and Staff Attorney at the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Give me some specific cases that the FFRF has undertaken. It can be related to Christmas or otherwise. I don't really care.
So one that I'm dealing with right now is a school board prayer in Chino Valley, California. Actually, the school board in that area is reading from the Bible, proselytizing, telling people they should believe in Jesus, and having a prayer at their meetings. And they are relying on the Supreme Court's decision May 5th in the town of Greece versus Galloway, which allows prayer at certain government meetings to say that they can do all of this. We disagree and we sued. And actually we sued with just 2 families, and we had an additional 18 people come out and join our lawsuit because they're so fed up with the school board promoting religion. So that's one of the suits we're working on. We also have, I think our current total is 14 other lawsuits going right now, and I'm getting ready to file another one today where this county in New Jersey has given more than $5 million over the past 4 years to churches to help the churches sort of restore and rebuild, which completely violates the New Jersey Constitution. So we have a lot going on, and those are just the lawsuits. And, very few of the complaints we get, we're going to get more than 4,000 state church complaints this year. Very few of them end up as lawsuits. We always try to solve things with education first. We write letters, we make phone calls, we argue with attorneys for local governments and explain to them what the law and Constitution actually say. And we're often, in most cases, able to resolve the issues right then and there without having to go to court. And that's how we prefer to operate.
There was a story in Florida here just a few months ago about a city council that ended up deciding to ban prayer outright because there was a Satanist who threatened litigation because the Satanist wanted an opportunity to lead the invocation. Are you familiar with this story?
Yes, actually, and this has happened at several different places around Florida. And Florida is my beat with the FFRF. It's one of the states that I work on. And I actually helped that gentleman get prayer stopped. His name is Chaz Stevens, and he is a self-professed Satanist who wants to give prayers at government meetings. And the Supreme Court said last summer that if a government meeting wants to have a prayer, they're allowed to do that. But they pretty much have to open it to everybody, and this is a quote, including an atheist who might want to give a prayer. So they can't, once they say, yes, we can have prayers, they can't keep anybody out. and they tried to keep Chaz out. I wrote several letters to different commissions, and I think our tally now is at 4, who have since received our letter and decided, you know what, we're not going to have any prayer at all, which is what we prefer in the first place. They should just go ahead and get off their knees and get right to work.
We had some of that going on in Oklahoma with the big 10 Commandments monument that was on display at the Oklahoma Capitol. And the Satanists wanted to have their own monument. And then I think it was the Hindus.
Yeah, there was a Hindu sect that also wanted to get it. But in that case, the ACLU took a lawsuit before all that happened, and they actually won the case on the basis of the Oklahoma Constitution, and that's why the 10 Commandments were removed.
So they removed the commandments from the Capitol property. And
Exactly.
It was in October of this year that a team of cowboys, and I'm not making this up, a team of cowboys on horseback carried a plaque of the 10 Commandments to the state capitol steps and presented them to Governor Mary Fallin right there. And so you see this line of cowboys bearing an American flag and a Christian flag holding the 10 Commandments, and they are presenting this this rock, this thing, to the governor, which she accepts, and there's baby kissing and hand holding and backslapping, and it's just, and nothing changed legally. But This was their way, I guess, of trying to take back the narrative. I don't know. Did you read that story?
I did. I saw a little bit about that story. And, Governor Fallin was very reluctant to, and that's putting it mildly, I think, to actually remove the monument after the court ordered that it come down, as was your Attorney General, Mr. Pruitt, who is not a fan of yours truly. He has disagreed with me very publicly and on several occasions, and he's been wrong on every one of those occasions. However, these shows of public piety are, they're nothing more than pandering to the base. And the Christian flag next to the American flag, to me, is it's scary in one respect, and then in another respect, it's almost laughable. If you look, there's this common theme and this common refrain that we hear, which is we're a Christian nation. And I think most people can kind of refute that, and that claim doesn't really hold a lot of water. But the fallback position is that we're a nation founded on Judeo-Christian principles, which to me is really the laughable part, because if you look at the principles of Judeo-Christianity and you compare them to America's founding principles, they are in such conflict that I think it's fair to say that Christianity is un-American in some respects. So when you see those two flags waving side by side, it's always, to me, very much a conflict that I see. I see it's got to be one or the other almost.
Talking with Andrew Seidel, staff attorney with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. As written about in The Blaze recently. By the way, The Blaze is a quote-unquote news and entertainment website which was founded by conservative radio host and Mormon Glenn Beck. The headline says, defiant residents of this small town want to put Christ back in Christmas, and they're about to send a strong message to atheist activists. Residents of a small city in New Mexico want to put Christ back in Christmas amid an ongoing battle with atheists over the presence of a nativity scene in a public park. So they're planning a massive holiday celebration aimed at sending a powerful message to their secular critics. As The Blaze previously reported, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, an atheist activist group, has been calling for the removal of a nativity scene that's been on permanent display for decades in Belen, New Mexico. Am I saying it right? Belen?
I believe so, yes.
Belen? The group first went after the nativity, which was placed inside the park back in 1992. In August, after an unnamed local resident complained it poses a constitutional violation. The Freedom from Religion Foundation subsequently penned a letter to Belen officials calling the display unlawful. Supporters of the nativity, though, have come together to raise $50,000 for a massive December 5th event called Follow the Star that will include a petting zoo, choir, actors, crafts, and an orchestra, all activities aimed at supporting the beloved nativity. It's a nativity scene. I'll play devil's advocate. It's a nativity scene. I mean, how does this not make you assholes. You know, I mean, come on, it's been there for a few decades. It makes everybody happy. It's Christmas. Is this the battle we want to be fighting? Blah, blah, blah. How would you respond to that?
Sure. So first, we actually wrote this letter back in August. You know, the war on Christmas is getting earlier and earlier every year. But we wrote it back in August because this is a permanent nativity scene that has been up that entire time. And courts have regularly said, and I don't think many people would disagree with this, that the nativity scene is very clearly a religious message. And when the government puts it up, it is endorsing that religious message. And the one sort of catch that courts have allowed is that if that message is so diluted by secular things like Santa Claus and reindeer and candy canes, this has been jokingly referred to by legal scholars as the 3 reindeer test, then it's okay for it to stay up. But you don't have any of that in Belen, and it is absolutely a permanent nativity scene. The mayor's first reaction upon receiving our letter, and you can watch video of this, is, quote, seething anger. So, of course, you can imagine why our local complainant doesn't feel comfortable outing themselves when you have the mayor saying, you know, the first thing that comes to his mind is seething anger.
Oh, yeah, you got some serious righteous indignation going on.
Absolutely. And that's the problem with the government endorsing religion, no matter how big or small. And this is the reason that the founders chose to separate state and church, is because religion is the most divisive force throughout human history. And when you mix it with politics, especially in a representative democracy, it not only cheapens the politics, but it also cheapens the religion. And it makes a government that is based on compromise virtually impossible, because it turns these issues into black and white issues. So it really is religion and government really is a toxic mix, and it's something that we do need to avoid at all costs. And thankfully, the Constitution helps us.
Let's see what our listeners have to say. I've got Trav on Skype. Trav, you're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. How's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Do you have any battles during Christmas between you and your family or somebody else?
No, we're actually pretty good. I'm an atheist, but my parents, they're kind of more liberal Christians. Of course, they, still believe in the supernatural stuff, but they're pretty cool about, they don't rant about, the war on Christmas or anything like that, because they think it's just as ridiculous as I do.
So you have nothing to offer the show today, Trav?
Well, actually,
no, sorry.
Well, nothing as far as personal stories involving me and my family, but I just want to chime in and say I don't really get the whole war on Christmas thing. I, like a lot of people, well, let me give you an example. This past Saturday, I went to a local tree lighting ceremony in town, and one of the speakers there was like member of the local board or whatever you want to call it.
He was a city official in some capacity.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And he said, don't forget the reason why we're all here. Don't forget the reason for the season. I thought, oh God, here it comes. He didn't say the J word, Jesus, but it's pretty obvious what he was referring to. And he said, I know it's not politically correct, but in my house, we say Merry Christmas. And I'm thinking, okay, good for you.
Andrew, is this a kind of self-gratification? A manufactured martyrdom where they can go out and thump their chest and say, they may tell us we can't say Merry Christmas, but damn it, we're going to do it anyway, right?
Absolutely, this is manufactured. Manufactured martyrdom, and I'm going to steal that phrase.
Knock yourself out. Knock yourself out, yeah.
First of all, it's right. It's not politically incorrect to say Merry Christmas. That's adopting the position of the majority of the people in this country who are Christian and celebrate Christmas. So it's not politically incorrect in any way, shape, or form. If you are a government official and you are telling people how to worship, and you're sort of directing people's religious beliefs or religious worship, then that's not politically incorrect either. That's unconstitutional or illegal. So you've entered a whole nother territory. So the idea that it's politically incorrect is a little bit of a sham as well. But absolutely there is this desire by Christians to be persecuted, and that's where the war on Christmas comes from.
But Andrew, is it cool if I, as an elected official, go out and utter an opinion? In my house, we say Merry Christmas. Is that crossing the church-state line? Because I'm talking about myself in that capacity.
No, it's not. And the line is, and I will admit that the line can get a little fuzzy for even attorneys sometimes. You can say, well, in this situation, in this hypothetical. But basically what courts have said is that it's okay for the government to celebrate Christmas in a sort of secular fashion. We can put up Christmas trees, you can put up holly, you can put up mistletoe. But once you start endorsing the religious beliefs that underlie the season, quote unquote, then you've sort of turned the corner. Now, you can't kind of cloak that by saying this is what we do in our house when you're speaking as a public official, because you're speaking as a public official. The only reason you have that podium, the only reason you have that microphone is because you are a government official occupying a government office. So you can't get up there and say, this is what we do in our house. We pray to Jesus. Then you're sort of crossing the line and really beginning to endorse Christianity. And that's where the problem is.
Trav, can I ask you what part of the world you live in?
I live on the eastern shore of Maryland.
There's a lot of religion out where you are, Trav?
Yes. I mean, it's not like the Bible Belt or anything like that. Maryland is a pretty interesting state. It's right on top of the Mason-Dixon line. And so there's that little mixture of like, quote unquote, blue state, northern mentality, plus also more of the conservative southern side as well. On the eastern shore, it's fairly conservative.
Travis, you do Christmas in your house?
Oh, yeah, we do.
All right.
I, of course, don't attend church on Christmas Eve, but yeah, we exchange gifts. We set up a tree. We sing songs. And by singing songs, I mean I crank up I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day by Wizard on my iPod and dance around and sing along when nobody's watching.
All right. Well, celebrate however you want. The holiday belongs to you. Trav, thanks for the call. Thanks for being a part of the broadcast.
Sure, no problem.
Let's talk about this weird religion and heritage, religion and culture sort of line. How do you draw that? If something is religious, but we have done it so much and so often, it actually weaves itself into the historical fabric of the United States. At what point does that practice or item or icon merit or warrant protection? Is this a conversation that you guys have to have legally? It's something that has been done for so long. It actually isn't just a religious thing now. Now it's actually part of our history and heritage.
We do have that regularly, and it's unfortunately, it's something that courts have used to uphold what I would consider constitutional violations. If you apply that reasoning to something else, something like, say, slavery or something like segregation, it becomes very obvious that using tradition to buttress something is just a bad idea. And in my mind, it's generally an indication of a weakness of the argument for keeping something. You can't come up with anything better, so you say, well, tradition. And you saw this with government prayer. When the Supreme Court first upheld this back in 1983 in Marsh versus Chambers, basically what they said is, hey, we've been doing this since back in the 1770s, so we're going to go ahead and let you keep doing it, which is not a very good rationale. And it's also kind of silly when you think, well, back in most of the 1770s, we were actually English. We were English colonies. We had an established church. This was before the Constitution even existed. And they're saying that before the Constitution was around is a reason that we can keep things that are here after the Constitution is around. It doesn't really make any sense to me. So it's a difficult fight to have. And the flip side of it that gets swept under the rug, at least by the religious side, is that it cheapens religion. And I think In God We Trust is probably the best example of this. The Supreme Court basically has said that through rote repetition, the language In God We Trust has lost all religious meaning. And I think if listeners pause to think about that and imagine if the Supreme Court was saying some other very obviously religious statement was not religious, churches would go nuts. Imagine the Supreme Court saying John 3:16 through rote repetition has lost all religious meaning. People would go bonkers over it, and rightfully so. This is not a decision really that the Supreme Court has the ability to make, given the separation of state and church. So to me, it's frustrating on two respects. The tradition side is generally just a bad argument, and that there's sort of this hypocrisy by upholding this obviously religious language by saying it's not religious.
Well, it also speaks to the favoritism of one religion over another. If it said, in Allah we trust, most of the people I know at the corner church, the First Baptist Church or the What's Happening Now or whatever, that would just flip.
Absolutely.
And now it's not about freedom. Oh, it's freedom of religion. You're killing us. What
Absolutely.
are you doing?
And to me, this is why there is no war on Christmas. We have fun with it and we joke about it, but in reality, there is no war on Christmas. There is a fight to end Christian privilege in this country. FFRF is leading the charge, and the secular movement is winning. We are winning the fight to end Christian privilege. The whining and the rhetoric about the war on Christmas is really just Christian persecution complex gone nuts. They're kind of raging against the dying of their privilege, if you want to get poetic about it. But there is no war on Christmas. There's just a fight to end Christian privilege, and we're winning.
I mean, you've got a job where the minute you appear on somebody's radar, you're probably the most hated person in the zip code, at least. I don't know if it's a gig I would want, Andrew. I saw an article recently in Fox News, of all places, that was about the Nativity in a Christmas production in Oregon. And you wanted to prevent public school choirs from performing in a Catholic shrine, something like that?
That's exactly right. And this is another one of the cases that I've worked on for FFRF. This came to us a couple of years ago, actually, from a number of local complainants. There's a place called the Grotto in Portland, Oregon, and it is a Catholic shrine. And there's a huge Catholic church there with all kinds of just really ridiculous, over-the-top Catholic imagery. The Seven Sorrows of Mary murals, the Stations of the Cross. You've got statues and carvings and Bibles all over the place. It's an impossibly religious space. And you have public school choirs who are singing for credit. So a lot of them, it's actually mandatory that they go to this, being taken to this Catholic shrine to sing sacred religious music. The shrine, when they tell these public schools to come, they say specifically, you need to be selecting religious music. It's not okay to be selecting secular Frosty the Snowman type stuff. It's got to be religious stuff. And then the shrine is actually charging money for people to come in and see these choirs. So you've got public school children being forced to go to a Catholic shrine to perform for the financial benefit of the Catholic Church. It's wrong on many, many levels, and we had a very active local chapter there, and the school board finally, after a year or two, decided, yeah, we see the problem with this, and we're going to go ahead and stop it. But even in very liberal Portland, we got a lot of blowback. I posted a couple of the hate mail things I've received on my Facebook page, and it's from all over the country.
How much of this, though, is they see the light? They see that you're actually right on the facts. And how much of it is they're just sick of the noise and they are terrified of a lawsuit and they want you to go away? You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. And it's difficult to tell. I think there is probably a reluctance to get sued, but we don't want to sue a public school. I don't want to take money out of public education. That's the last thing I want to do. So, we really work hard to not sue any public school if we can avoid it. It's really a last resort for us. We give them every option to not waste time and money on these. But there's also an element of not wanting to give in to us, which makes me think it's very much, I think, the persuasive power of our argument that is successful. Oftentimes we'll get letters back from the school's attorneys or government attorneys, and they'll say, we disagree with everything. You're wrong on the facts. You're wrong on the law. And then the very last sentence is, however, we've gone ahead and stopped saying prayers before our city council meetings anyway.
Wow.
Or they won't include that last line, and then we'll find out from our complainant that they actually did stop the violation. They just were not wanting to tell us because, nobody wants to be seen to be giving in to the atheists, kind of.
I'm going to get back to the switchboard in just a second. From my Facebook page, a gentleman named George said, suing local governments over nativity scenes on public property is misguided. It feeds the persecution complex and makes secular people look like jerks. As a religious believer, I was very disgusted by these tactics. As an atheist, I see where the FFRF is coming from, but I think the approach does more harm than good. Steve says, I agree with the FFRF 100%. We as non-believers have to combat religious privilege wherever and whenever it rears its ugly head. Once they get an established foothold, it becomes tradition to bend to their beliefs and symbolism, and it becomes accepted by the popular culture. You have to nip it in the bud, or it will spread like the disease it truly is, and pervade every nook and cranny of the American experience. Kathy said, I'm totally behind the FFRF, so much so they are the recipients of my Amazon Smile account.
All right,
Kathy. Steve said, give the fundies an inch, they'll take a mile, smack them down at the beginning, and they back off. I don't actually know if it's the beginning. Many of these things have been going on for decades.
Yes. One thing I think we should be wary of is the idea that this in particular, or these lawsuits in particular, are feeding the Christian persecution complex. I mean, if red cups from Starbucks feed the Christian persecution complex, they're just going to find something no matter what.
Well, to be fair, though, and I've said this publicly before, I don't know one Christian who was offended by the Starbucks thing. I honestly think it's almost completely Joshua Feuerstein and a few of his minions who maybe have social media. I don't know any Christians, and I'm around devout believers who they just don't care. I mean, Starbucks red cups, they just wasn't a thing for them. Now they do flip out about the 10 Commandments and the baby Jesus. And of course, this is a sort of a fuzzy area for me. I don't really know. When I see the FFRF going after some nativity on a fire station lawn or something, and somebody raises a big stink about it, I just don't know if that's the battle I want to fight.
Sure, I understand that. And it's a good question to ask. And it's certainly something that the movement needs to be checking itself on always. I think we should be self-critical of our movement in a way that religion is not. It's how we're going to win.
And I hate to be too much of a politician about it, but I see both sides of the issue. One is it's a violation, and on principle, move it over the fence to a piece of private property, and I'm great, And then the other part of me is there's so many other battles to fight. Isn't it a distraction? We look like jerks. I go back and forth all the time on this thing.
Sure. So I will say two things on that. First is that I can tell you from a legal standpoint that these quote unquote little violations are 100% used to justify bigger violations, and not just by, the average Christian arguing on the street, but by courts, including the Supreme Court. They look at these little things that have gone unchallenged and they say, you know what, it's okay now. And they will justify larger and larger and ever larger violations based on those small things. James Madison said that it's proper to take alarm at the first experiment on our liberties. And I agree with that sentiment entirely. I think we have to draw that line, that principled line, and we have to defend it. The metaphor that we use to understand the First Amendment is the wall of separation between state and church. And this should be a wall. It should be tall and strong, not this fine line that's kind of easily overstepped. So from a legal standpoint, it really is an absolute fact that these small, seemingly insignificant violations are used to justify bigger ones. And this is part of the talk that I gave at the Free Flow conference that I had the privilege and the distinct terror of speaking after you. That you showed that amazing video, and then I had to get up there and talk about all this obscure legal stuff. So that was a lot of fun for me.
Oh, you were great. You did great. So. Do you get a lot of pushback from people inside the atheist quote-unquote movement, people who are atheist activists who think that the FFRF is misdirected and doing more damage than good?
We do get pushback, but I think, and I've given this talk before, it's don't sweat this, or sweat the small stuff is the idea that I kind of like to push. And the talk developed because I have been getting blowback about this. So the first TV interview I ever did was Bill O'Reilly. And it was about President Obama's inauguration and the use of religion in the inauguration. And I wrote a letter to Obama asking him to not use the 4 words at the end of the oath, "So help me God," because those words don't appear in the Constitution. And I don't think in the act of swearing to uphold a document, you should go ahead and start amending it. And I also asked him while he was at it, maybe he could leave out the Bible and do what John Quincy Adams did and, swear on the Constitution itself, or a stack of law books might be a little more appropriate. And I was surprised by the reaction from people in the movement. And they were saying the same kind of thing, is this important? Do we really want to be addressing this? This seems like a waste of our time. And I think the analogy that I like is one that Greta Christina proposed. And she said, these aren't the most pressing problems facing the movement. And they're not. But that doesn't mean they're not important. And she likened it to the segregated drinking fountains for the civil rights era and the segregated lunch counters. Those weren't the most pressing problems facing the fighters for civil rights, but that didn't mean they weren't unimportant. And that's because symbols can be really, really powerful in our country. And the reason that you see nativity scenes on public land and Christian flags flying over cities and city halls in Alabama is because those symbols can be very, very powerful. And I think we as atheists tend to kind of downplay the importance of symbols. They mean less to us. We like to look at the underlying ideas and see whether or not they're worthy. We sort of ignore the power of symbols at our own peril.
So you're saying large or small, they remain symptoms of the disease?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We got Kathleen on Skype. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. How are you?
Hi, Seth. Doing pretty good.
Where are you calling me from today?
I'm calling from Modena, Italy, actually.
Wow.
Are you a student? Do you work there? What are you doing?
I married a fantastic Italian 8 years ago from a nearby town called Ferrara. And I've been here ever since. I taught English to small children for 4 years, and now I'm working for a large company doing warranty.
Wonderful. Well, talk to me about the war on Christmas. What do you have for the broadcast?
Well, this is very, very recent. This is only from, as I understand it, the last week and a half, more or less. There's been an upset in Milan, and the whole country is turning upside down over it. Basically, what happened is in all schools in Italy at the end of the year, like near to Christmas, they do a Christmas pageant, and the children go up and sing, and there's all the parents, and then there's snacks, and everybody goes home. But what's happened is this small school in a small town outside of Milan, the principal has proposed to postpone the end of the year, shenanigans to January, and to make all of the songs winter only, non-religious, non-Christmas, winter themed, to include all of the extracomunitari in English, like foreigners.
No, you know what? Do the next 15 seconds just in Italian for me, just for the hell of it. Come on, tell me the story in Italian.
È successo così che a Milano una scuola piccola, il preside si è detto: guarda, abbiamo tanti extracomunitari, tanti stranieri, tanti non cristiani, dobbiamo sistemarci per includere tutti.
Such a beautiful language when spoken well, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It really is. Well, let's get back to those end-of-year shenanigans.
The end-of-year shenanigans.
So I'm to take it then that these pageants or whatever were overtly religious?
Now, it depends on the school. I live in a very, and I say communist loosely here. We use that term as like democratic. We live in a very democratic region, Emilia-Romagna. And we don't have that problem as much as bluer counties, let's say, like Lombardia, Veneto. They're quite a lot more religious than we are.
So they're sort of reflective of the individual communities in which these schools are, some more,
Absolutely,
some less
yes.
religious. Okay. So this guy comes out and he says, hey, let's change everything to sort of a generic winter thing and let's push it past the holiday. Was that the deal?
Exactly. And basically what's happened is the moms all got together. I'm sure there was some kind of a chat group on Facebook about the abomination of, oh no, we're not singing Christmas carols. The children are going to grow up damned, and what are we going to do? I'm sure. I see the Facebook chat messages in my head.
So is it going to court, or is it right now just in the court of public opinion?
Right now it's in the court of public opinion, but to the point where our prime minister has even commented. And Matteo Renzi is, I think he turned 40 this year, if I'm not remembering correctly.
Oh, so he's a young fella. Oh, okay, good. That's good
he's pretty young, but he's siding with religion in this case. He said that the principle has been quote unquote provocativo, which in this case, it's not provocative in the way that we use it in English. It's more like asking for trouble.
Provocativo.
Well, he is taking the war. He is taking the war on Christmas international. So, I mean, that's a lot to answer for.
So is it just a political football for this guy, you think? Hey, I'm going to score some points with the electorate and play to the populace? Or do you think is he a religious guy overtly or what?
Now, this is where it gets interesting because our great cornflake pisser-inners, the Lega Nord, they are like a political party that is extreme, kind of like our Tea Party, I guess.
Uh-huh.
They believe that at the northern border of Emilia-Romagna, that is the end of Italy. All south from there, it doesn't even get to be called Italy anymore. They're very, loyal to the north, let's say, and very anti-immigration, very, very anti-immigration. And they're calling for this principal to be fired immediately, for an official investigation to go into the school and make sure that Christmas isn't completely banned and it's gotten crazy.
Bunch of damn cornflake pisser-inners trying to ruin Christmas for the rest of us. Andrew, do you have a take on any of this? And does any of it reflect anything that's going on here in the United States?
Oh, absolutely. It mirrors actually a lawsuit that we have going on in Indiana right now. In Concord High School, the school puts on every year, and they've done this for 40 years, a live nativity scene in which the children, quote, reenact, even though there is nothing to really reenact, the nativity story from the Bible, and then you have an adult basically reading out from the Bible, a play-by-play. They don't tell us how they reconcile the differences in the stories, but...
that's my next question. Do you read it out of Matthew or Luke? Because those stories are actually different stories. You might want to do those on different nights, kind of thing.
Indeed, but they just gloss over those. And we actually had a father and a son approach us and explain, hey, we're in this school and we'd really like this to stop because it makes us outsiders in our own community. We don't believe in this. And it's highly illegal, unconstitutional, so we went ahead and took a lawsuit on it. And the principal's idea here in Italy is, I think very laudable. He's trying to be inclusive of all the children in the school. And I think everybody remembers how...
Something that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but something that needs to be said here, and this is as an American-Italian hybrid here, he did not bother to ask the Muslims in the school if they had a problem.
But I don't know if that matters to me at all. I mean, I think going out of your way to be inclusive to all students, regardless of what they believe, especially when you think about how horrible kids can be to each other when there is a kid who's different in the mix, especially, and this is the problem with the reaction by the adults in this situation, especially when they see adults reacting that way. They take their cues from the adults in the community and see that it's okay to sort of vilify the religious minorities now. And
absolutely.
Well, hang on, Kathleen. What's the Muslim response been from the school?
They said, look, we didn't have a problem. We want our children to be included and to be the same as everybody else. We don't want everything to change. It's a double-edged sword here.
I see.
Well, and partly for them, at least I can tell you here in America, being that minority and being recognized as that minority and then being seen to be against Christmas can be very detrimental. It can what they're probably trying to do right now is deflect the blame so that their kids don't get bullied and so that they don't get even more alienated and ostracized, which is something that we see happen regularly in schools in this country when kids are outed as non-believers or as another religious minority, particularly if they're standing up for the First Amendment against the religious privilege of the majority.
They don't want to be seen by others as a provocativo. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure I'm butchering the word. Say it again for me.
Provocativo.
God, you know, it sounds great when she does it. When I do it, it just sounds like some sort of redneck mistake.
After a couple of more tries, you'll say it just like me.
You know what? If you can teach English, you can teach Italian. Let's hook up and I want to become bilingual, damn it. Do you celebrate Christmas in your own life, Kathleen?
Absolutely. It's something that I really take a lot of joy in is the Christmas tradition here is very, very family oriented, and it's becoming less and less religious and more about family. And that's something that Italy does so well is family. And I've been so fortunate to have a fantastic family here, like my husband's family. And we do the cooking together and the eating together and the eating together.
And you are an atheist. You have no belief in a supernatural being of any kind, right?
No, sir.
Does anybody ever give you any shit for that? Hey, you're an atheist. What are you doing?
In my office every Easter, the prete, the priest, and a nun come in and offer the blessings, and they always question why I did not lower my head and offer to have communion.
Wait a minute. They have communion at your office on Easter?
Yeah. And it's pretty normal, and I work for a pretty big company.
You don't raise a big stink about it. You go with it. You are not a cornflake pisser inner, if I may, on this issue. Is that right? You just kind of go with it?
On this particular issue, my cornflakes remain unpissed in.
You're a great call and a great addition to the show. I hope the holidays are great for you, Kathleen. Thanks for being a part of the broadcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, and you gentlemen have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm just about to fix dinner.
All right, take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Talking here with Andrew Seidel of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Were you guys involved in the whole 9/11 Memorial Cross thing?
We were not involved in the 9/11 Memorial Cross. That was the American Atheists who took that suit.
There was a crossbeam that was in the shape of a cross because it is a crossbeam.
Yes.
And many people thought this is a sign, it's a symbol, it's a reminder. And of course, I saw a meme or something on the internet that, I mean, it was a little harsh, but it was true. And it said, I'm sorry, 3,000 of you are dead, but here's a nice cross. I mean, it was essentially the message Jesus would have given if that's all he left us in the wake of this horrible tragedy, you know?
Sure. And it's amazing that there was only one, you know, I mean, think of how many cross beams there must have been in those buildings. And
so what was your take on all that? I mean, that was a worthy fight.
I agree with that. Absolutely. You know, I mean, we see this a lot on veterans memorials. You know, you'll see a veterans memorial and the only religious icon on it will be this huge cross. And there have been a number of cases about this that have gone to the Supreme Court. And by doing that, you're not honoring our veterans and our soldiers. You're honoring our Christian veterans and our Christian soldiers. And, you know, the latest stats are that 23.4% of the military are non-religious. Of FFRF members, we have about 23,000 members, and 1/4 of them are active duty or retired military. So there's a huge portion of the military that are non-Christian. And I think these monuments that just have the crosses and just honor the Christian soldiers are very disrespectful. And, you know, FFRF here at our headquarters in Madison, we actually just erected a 2-ton Atheists in Foxholes monument. And at Veterans Day, we had a big celebration. A lot of our veteran members came by and posed for photos with this beautiful monument. It's made out of the same stone as Mount Rushmore. It's really, really lovely. We're happy to have it here at the headquarters.
Ultimately, here at the end of the day, doesn't it come down to just drawing the simple distinction between public and private? Right? People have a constitutional right to embrace and extol a private faith and to erect all these monuments and these nativity scenes and crosses, and within reason, on private property. We're just saying it's a personal faith. I mean, doesn't it all come down to that one sentence?
I think that's beautifully put. And we're also, maybe to add a little bit to it, is you don't get to use the government to promote your personal faith. Even if you happen to occupy a government office at the moment, you don't get to abuse your power and abuse that office to promote your personal faith. So I think that is well put. And that's exactly what it's about. Christians this time of year like to assert their unwarranted privilege, and they use the government property or their government offices to promote their personal religion. And that's what we see happening in this quote unquote war on Christmas.
I guess also we have to add the addendum that just because you were being disagreed with or contradicted, it doesn't mean you're being attacked. You're not a victim.
Absolutely. I think that's very important. If people could do a little bit better job of being disagreed with in this country, we might get a lot more done.
Well, Andrew, do you have any final thoughts on Christmas? I mean, are you a Christmassy guy? Do you like to enjoy the holiday? I mean, there are a lot of atheists who don't, but I know there are a ton of atheists who do, right?
Absolutely. We celebrate Christmas. We get a tree, which is not, I guess, all that Christmassy. You have a great video about the origins of Christmas that I just watched and put on my Facebook page the other day.
Thanks.
And I loved the Thursday analogy. That was my favorite. But yeah, we put up a tree. Our tree topper is now the Sorting Hat from Harry Potter, because we're big Harry Potter nerds in my household. We love to give gifts. We love to get together with family. We like to eat big, ridiculous meals, sit by the fire, have a little booze. And I think that those are the true meanings of Christmas. Those are the reasons for the season, I would say, not some myth from 2,000 years ago.
If you have an opinion, you can send it to Andrew directly. Just send it to he's trying to destroy Jesus at FFRF. Just kidding. No, actually, if you want to find out what the FFRF's about, it's FFRF.org. And Andrew Seidel, thanks so much for spending some time on the radio, and I hope the holidays are great for you. Merry Christmas, okay?
Merry Christmas to you too, sir.
I want to come back to the question posited at the beginning of the broadcast. Why would an atheist celebrate Christmas? How does someone who doesn't believe in Christ participate in a day with Christ in the title? Well, I produced a video last December. I produced it originally for Atheist TV, and I released it on my YouTube channel. I will include the link in the description box of this show, and I'm going to play the audio of it here. It runs about 15 minutes. It's my explanation of not only why I enjoy and celebrate the Christmas holiday, but some of the origins of many of our beloved Christmas traditions, a huge percentage of which are not actually Christian in nature. Now, I know there are a lot of people who would like to present this to believers in their own families and friends of theirs who've asked them the same question. Hey, you're an atheist. What are you doing? And those people would never abide or even entertain or watch anything on an atheist YouTube channel. So if you sent them the YouTube link and they saw The Thinking Atheist was the name of the channel, they wouldn't even watch. They just shut down. So I'm also going to include the link to the Facebook upload of this. I have it uploaded to my Seth Andrews Facebook page. And that doesn't have atheist anywhere in the title, so you can maybe present it to somebody else and they can watch it. And if they'll last the 15 minutes, if nothing else, hopefully it will increase the understanding of how we approach this December holiday. And it's what I'm going to leave you with tonight. It is called Christmas Behind the Curtain. Hey, I'm Seth Andrews. I'm host of the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. I want to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas. Now, that might seem odd to some people. Why would an atheist say Merry Christmas? In fact, why would an atheist celebrate Christmas at all? It's Christmas, and atheists don't believe in Christ, right? Do you enjoy Thursdays? I mean, have you ever enjoyed a Thursday or maybe done something special on a Thursday? Have you ever participated in Thursday? Well, does that mean that you honor the Norse deity Thor? Because that's where we get Thursday from. It's actually from the Old English Thor's Day. It's Thor's Day. And that's just one example of many days and dates and occasions we have that are named for ancient gods and goddesses. Monday is the Moon's Day for the worship of the moon. Wednesday is named for Woden, perhaps better known to us as the Norse god Odin. Saturday is Saturn's Day for the pagan deity Saturn, or Cronus, the father of Zeus. The month of January was named for the deity Janus. Our month of March is named after Mars, the Roman god of war, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, if you don't believe in the pagan deity Saturn, does that mean that you aren't supposed to participate in Saturday? You don't get to enjoy your Saturday? Well, of course not. I mean, that's ridiculous. And the reason it's ridiculous is because the name of the day, the meaning of the day, is much different here in the 21st century than it was in ancient times. And this is how many atheists and non-Christians view the holiday of Christmas. Sure, Christ is in the title, but you don't have to believe in a literal Christ to be able to enjoy the holiday. Christmas is for all of us. It's for everyone. And that fact really bothers some people. Those are the annual screams of protest about the war on Christmas. You see, many Christians say that Christmas itself is under attack, and it's apparently under attack by people like me. Non-believers, atheists, they say we want to strike Christ from Christmas. We want to toss nativity scenes in the garbage bin. We want to mute the voices of Christmas carolers as they sing glory to the newborn King. We want to suck the joy out of the whole month of December and force everybody to unplug the Christmas lights and cancel the pageants and destroy everything with the baby Jesus on it, creating absolutely no joy to the world. The thing is, I'm an atheist, right? I'm an atheist activist. And I'm supposedly on the front lines of this war on Christmas. And I have no idea what they're talking about. I've talked to atheist activist friends of mine. They have no idea what they're talking about. It's very possible that maybe we just have one big misunderstanding. Maybe we need to better understand each other. And so I'm going to call this episode Christmas Behind the Curtain. Now, if you are a Christian and you believe in a literal baby Jesus and you celebrate this holiday religiously, cool. But hang with me here for just a few minutes, because there are some things about Christmas that you might find hugely surprising. I know I did when I learned them the first time. For example, Xmas is supposedly an attempt to X Christ out of his own holiday, right? We've heard this for years and years. Well, the truth is that X actually represents the first letter in the Greek word for Christ. It's not an attempt to remove Christ from Christmas. Xmas is Christmas. You might be surprised that the holiday season didn't originally belong to Jesus. In fact, if you look around, you're going to see icons that represent the earlier pagan roots of celebrations that relate to the winter solstice and the return of the sun. Not the sun, the sun. Long before the time of the Jesus story, December celebrations would signal the ending of winter, that the days would start getting longer, that the warmer weather was coming, and with it a new harvest, which was hoped to be plentiful. And so to petition the gods for good crops the next year, celebrations and offerings would be made in the month of December. The pagan festival of Saturnalia honored Saturn, the same god tied to our Saturday. The Vikings of Scandinavia honored Balder. Ancient Egyptians honored their sun god Ra, and so on. The gods would hopefully bless the land and the people, and the long winter would finally be over. Many of these gods had a special plant, the evergreen, which is most certainly the explanation for why you and I have a decorated evergreen tree in our living rooms every December. The Christmas tree harkens back to the honoring of gods that came well before Jesus and definitely were not Christian. In fact, Christmas trees were considered pagan symbols right here in the U.S. until the 1840s. That's right, if you celebrate Christmas, there's a really good chance you have a pagan symbol in your living room.
Here's an example. Do you have mistletoe hanging over a doorway in your house? Well, the early Druids and Greeks used to believe that mistletoe had magical powers, was a magical plant, a pagan symbol of life and fertility. Yule logs in the Christmas fireplace? Well, those stem back to the pagan festival of Yule, which honored Yule beings, pagan deities. Think about that the next time you warm yourself next to a Christmas fireplace. By the way, you might find this interesting. The United States of America didn't declare Christmas Day a national holiday until June the 26th, 1870, like 100 years after the Constitution was written. And those who say that we're a Christian nation probably don't realize that many of our founding fathers weren't actually Christians. Benjamin Franklin, not a Christian. James Madison, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, not Christians. Christians may not know that the U.S. Constitution never mentions God. And religion is only mentioned in the context of maintaining church-state separation. The words "in God we trust" weren't added to American coins until 1863. Paper money didn't have it until the Red Scare of the mid-20th century. You might not know this. The words "under God" were not in our original Pledge of Allegiance. "Under God" was added by Congress in the 1950s, almost 200 years after this nation was founded. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment was put in place to assure that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. At its very roots, the United States was designed to represent everybody, and not just Christians. And that is why you occasionally will hear protest whenever politicians elected to represent us all start promoting a single religion, their religion, on tax dollars that we all pay. Now, you want to celebrate Christmas religiously? You want religious symbols, nativity scenes, and Jesus Christ representing your Christmas? Knock yourself out. Not only do I, as an atheist, respect your right to do so, I will argue publicly for that right. You have a constitutional right to believe in Jesus Christ and have a personal faith. Now let's examine the Jesus story in the context of the Scripture. Let's look at the literal nativity, because an examination of the Bible actually raises a whole lot of interesting questions. Now, the Bible is God's perfect word, right? In fact, if you go to the mission statements of most major Protestant Bible-believing denominations, they'll just say it outright. The Bible is inerrant. It is God's perfect word. It is without contradiction. But if you look at the accounts in the book of Matthew and Luke side by side, they kind of contradict themselves. Check this out. In the book of Matthew, the angel appeared to Joseph to give him the news that Mary would give birth to the Christ child. But Luke tells us that the angel appeared to Mary, not Joseph. Luke chapter 2 says that Mary and Joseph traveled to Bethlehem from their home in Nazareth. But that contradicts the second chapter of Matthew, which says Mary and Joseph didn't call Nazareth home until after the death of Herod, which is also well after the birth of Jesus. The lineage of Jesus is mentioned in the Bible. The book of Matthew lists 28 generations between David and Jesus. But the book of Luke has its own reference to Christ's lineage, and it lists 41 generations. According to Matthew and Luke, Jesus was born during the reign of Herod the Great. But Luke says that the pregnant Mary had to travel with Joseph to register for a census that was decreed by Quirinius. And that's weird, because any census would have taken place in their local tax district, requiring no travel. And only Joseph, the head of house, would have been required to register. And if you look at the dates, Quirinius' census didn't take place until 6 CE, well after the birth date for Jesus Christ. Matthew tells us that after Jesus was born, Mary and Joseph fled for Egypt to hide from the evil king Herod. But if you look at the book of Luke, it has them returning immediately to Galilee, to Nazareth, and there is no mention of Herod anywhere. What about the miraculous virgin birth? Well, it looks like there was a mistranslation of the word virgin from the Hebrew to the Greek. The Hebrew word alma does not mean virgin. It means a young woman of marriageable age. By the way, several pagan gods which predate Jesus were also said to have miraculous virgin births, like Perseus and Romulus. What about the three kings? Well, Matthew tells us they were magi, which were essentially illusionists, and there's no mention of the number 3 anywhere in the story. And the whole magi thing doesn't jive with Luke's version, which has shepherds visiting Christ and not magi. And finally, take a second and just look around at the depictions of Jesus here in most American Christian homes that celebrate a literal Christ. Take a look at Jesus, the white-skinned Jesus. The truth is that a Jesus born in the Middle East during that time period would have almost certainly looked a whole lot more like this. So very quickly, let's just recap, okay? Christmas stems back to the celebrations of pagan gods, and today still incorporates a whole lot of pagan traditions. Jesus came after those pagan gods and the pagan celebrations of those gods. Jesus isn't the reason for the season, or at the very least, he's not the only reason for the season. And almost every true detail written about Jesus' birth in the Bible contradicts another true detail written in the very same book, a book that's supposed to be God's perfect word. Our Constitution says that government cannot play favorites, but should represent us all. And most of the people who freak out about atheists during Christmas, well, they probably celebrate Christmas in ways that don't really involve Christ anyway. I would wager that your favorite stuff about Christmas probably isn't religious at all, right? It's decorating the house, it's stockings over the fireplace, it's pumpkin pie and turkey and hot apple cider, it's playing in the snow and then rushing inside to warm up by the fireplace. It's seeing your children open gifts. It's spending time with those you care the most about. Honestly, the most awesome stuff about Christmas has nothing to do with Christ. There is no war on Christmas. Atheists aren't out to strike Christ from Christmas any more than we're out to strike Thor from Thursday. And those who believe in a literal baby Jesus are not victims just because somebody else reminds them that they don't have a monopoly on Christmas. Christians do not own the holiday. And in light of the true pagan origins of Christmas, Jesus doesn't own it either. Ultimately, Christmas isn't about gods or goddesses, offerings for the harvest, the feasts of the pagans, or the story of a super baby who came to save the world. It's really about something much, much better, more personal, more meaningful. Christmas is not a supernatural thing. Christmas is a human thing. For many of us, it really is the most wonderful time of the year. Just remember that December 25th, the Christmas holiday, isn't exclusive to Christians, and many non-Christians love to celebrate Christmas. We don't celebrate the religion of Christmas, we celebrate the tradition of Christmas. And Christmas belongs to everyone.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.